My parents demanded I give my sister my custom-made dining table because holidays are at her place and I am the second-born who isn't allowed to host. I ignored. A moving crew arrived with a pickup order, cracked a leg, and tried to roll it out. I filed a claim, requested footage, and the HOA CC'd Legal. Then the restorer found a hidden maker's mark that killed their story. A moving truck pulled up to my curb this morning. It wasn't one of the big, reputable brands you see on the highway, the ones with cheerful logos and promises of careful service. This was a plain white box truck, anonymous and slightly menacing, with a few deep scuffs along the side like old scars. A generic, forgettable name, Pro Move Logistics or something equally bland, was printed on the side in blocky blue letters that were starting to peel. I was in my kitchen, enjoying the quiet ritual of my first cup of coffee and the soft morning light slanting through the window, and I wouldn't have given the truck a second thought, except it stopped directly, deliberately, in front of my little bungalow. A man in a dusty work shirt, stained with sweat despite the early hour, got out, consulted a clipboard with a theatrical flourish, and then walked right up my garden path and knocked on my door. It wasn't a friendly knock, it was a hard, impatient rapping of knuckles against wood. I opened it, a confused frown already forming. He wasn't a delivery driver. He lacked their hurried energy. He had that weary, purposeful look of someone here to take something away, a repo man, or an eviction agent. His eyes, small and restless, darted past me, scanning the inside of my home. "Morning, ma'am," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that didn't quite meet my eye. "I've got a pickup order for a dining table. Name's Haley." He didn't say my sister's last name. He didn't have to. A cold, heavy feeling, like a block of ice, settled in the pit of my stomach. Because the pickup address on his order was mine, but the name was my sister's. And the dining table, well, the dining table was my masterpiece, my pride and joy. The single most beautiful and valuable thing I owned. And I knew, with a sudden, sickening certainty, that this was not a mistake. This was an invasion. Let me back up. To understand the sheer, unmitigated audacity of that moment, you need to understand two things: my family and my table. First, the family. I'm Hazel, 30-something, and I'm the second-born. In some families, that might not mean much. In mine, it's a life sentence. My older sister, Haley, is the sun around which our entire family system orbits. She was born first, she got married first, she bought the big suburban house with the 2-car garage and the manicured lawn first. Consequently, an unspoken rule was etched into our family's constitution, as binding as any legal document. Haley hosts. Everything. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every Easter brunch, every milestone birthday. The gravitational pull of Haley's house was absolute. The excuse was always the same, delivered with a gentle, pitying smile. "Oh, Hazel, your apartment is lovely, but it's just too cozy for all of us." Or, "Haley just has the space, honey. It's easier this way." Or the one that always stung the most, from my mother, her voice laced with the implication that I was somehow deficient. "You're not used to organizing big gatherings, sweetie. Let your sister handle it. It's her role." My role, apparently, was to be a permanent guest, a supporting character in my own family's narrative. I was to show up with a perfectly baked side dish, smile, make small talk about my quaint little life, and then retreat back to my cozy home, which they all seemed to view as a sort of starter kit version of adulthood. It didn't matter that I loved hosting, that I was a great cook, or that I'd kill to have the chaos of my own family filling my home with laughter. The rule was the rule. I wasn't allowed to host. Now about the table. This wasn't some flat-pack piece of particle board from a big box store, assembled with an Allen key and a string of curse words. This was the table. For 2 years, I worked extra shifts as a graphic designer, taking on tedious freelance projects that bled into my weekends. I squirreled away every spare dollar, living on a diet that was frankly embarrassing for a grown woman. I didn't do it for a vacation or a fancy car, I did it for a table. I'd found a local artisan, an old man named Arthur, who worked out of a dusty, magical-smelling workshop filled with wood shavings and the low hum of well-loved tools. He was a true master craftsman, the kind of person who spoke of wood as if it were a living thing with a history and a soul. Together, we designed it. I showed him my sketches, my ideas. He listened patiently, then guided me, teaching me about the character of different woods. I wanted solid American black walnut, and he found the perfect piece for me. A single, magnificent slab for the top, with a live edge that followed the natural, graceful curve of the tree it had once been. I designed the legs myself, a modern, minimalist trapezoid shape in brushed steel that contrasted with the rustic warmth of the wood. It was custom-sized to fit my dining nook perfectly, as if it had grown there. It wasn't just furniture, it was a piece of my soul. It was a declaration that my cozy little home was worthy of beauty and permanence. It was the heart of my house, and I loved it more than any inanimate object had a right to be loved. It was, without a doubt, the most expensive thing I owned, a testament to my own hard work and patience. The conflict started, as it always did, with an impending holiday. Thanksgiving was a month away. Haley, naturally, had announced her plans for an extravagant feast for 30 people. A week before the moving truck showed up, she dropped by my place, ostensibly to borrow a book. The moment she saw the table, her eyes lit up with a possessive gleam that I knew all too well. It was the same look she'd had as a child when she decided my favorite doll was now hers. "Oh, Hazel," she cooed, running her perfectly manicured fingers along the live edge, her touch proprietary. "This is stunning. It's almost a shame it's tucked away in here where no one sees it." I forced a tight smile. "I see it every day. That's kind of the point." She ignored me, her mind already racing, redecorating my life to suit her needs. "You know," she said, her voice dripping with faux casualness, "this would be absolutely perfect for Thanksgiving. My table is fine, but this has such a family feel. It would look incredible with the big turkey on it." The campaign had begun. Over the next few days, I was bombarded. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare. The texts were relentless. From Haley, "Seriously, just think about it. The table would be the star of the show. It's meant for big family gatherings." Another one, "Don't be so selfish, Hazel. It's just a table. Family is what's important. This is for the family." And my personal favorite, the one that made my blood boil, "You barely even use it anyway. It's not like you're hosting anyone." Then my parents joined the choir, their calls perfectly timed to wear me down. My mother went first, her voice syrupy with manufactured concern. "Hazel, honey," she began. "Haley was telling me about your beautiful new table. It sounds wonderful. She really needs something like that for the holidays. You should let her borrow it. It would make her so happy." "It's not that simple, Mom," I tried to explain, my voice already defensive. "It was custom made, it's incredibly heavy, and I'm not comfortable with it being moved. It's the nicest thing I own." "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's wood and steel." "You're being sentimental." My father took a different tack, the classic greater good argument he used to settle all disputes, which always meant my good was sacrificed for someone else's. "Look, Hazel, it's a family asset. It should be where the family gathers. Holidays are at Haley's place. The table should be there too. Just be a team player for once. Don't make things difficult." The pressure was immense, a coordinated, multi-front assault on my boundaries. They made me feel small, selfish, and unreasonable. Every protest I made was twisted into a personal failing. I was ungenerous, difficult, not thinking about the family. After a week of this, I was exhausted. Worn down to a nub, my resolve had been eroded, grain by grain. In a moment of profound weakness, late one night after a particularly grueling call from my dad, I cracked. I called Haley. "Fine," I sighed, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "You can borrow the table for Thanksgiving, but you have to hire professional, insured movers. And you are responsible for any damage." There was a triumphant squeal on the other end of the line. "Oh, thank you, sweetie. You won't regret this. It's the right thing to do. I knew you'd see reason." I hung up, my heart sinking. I had said borrow. I had been explicit, but I knew them. In their minds, this wasn't a loan. It was a long overdue correction, a reallocation of a family asset to its rightful place. I knew, deep down, they had no intention of ever bringing it back. A few days passed in a tense silence. The dread in my gut grew with each passing hour, coiling like a snake. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. The beautiful table in my dining nook now seemed to mock me, a symbol of my own spinelessness. I finally broke down and called my best friend, Sarah. We met for coffee, and I recounted the whole sorry saga, my voice trembling with shame. She listened patiently, her expression growing darker with every word. When I finished, she reached across the table and put her hand on mine. "Hazel, what are you doing?" she said, her voice firm but kind. "They bullied you. That's your table. You saved for 2 years for that thing. You can't let them just take it. This isn't about the table anymore, is it? It's about them walking all over you your entire life." Hearing someone else say it, someone outside the toxic bubble of my family, was like a splash of cold water to the face. She was right. This wasn't about a table. This was about respect. This was about my home, my work, and my right to own something beautiful, without having it co-opted for someone else's life. This was the latest battle in a long, silent war, one hadn't even realized I was fighting. My spine, which had felt like cooked spaghetti for a week, began to stiffen. I went home, my hands shaking, but my resolve hardening into steel. I picked up the phone and called Haley. "Hey," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm sorry, but I've changed my mind. I've thought about it, and I'm not comfortable with the table leaving my house. It means too much to me. The answer is no." The silence on the other end was frigid. Absolute zero. Then, the explosion. "You have got to be kidding me," she shrieked, her voice pitching into a register of pure fury that I hadn't heard since we were children. "After I've already made plans? After you promised? What is wrong with you? Are you trying to ruin Thanksgiving? You are the most selfish person I have ever known." The text started immediately after she slammed the phone down. A torrent of vitriol. I was a selfish bitch, a liar, a family wrecker. I was jealous of her life, and this was my pathetic way of lashing out. My parents, calls followed. My mom was crying, accusing me of deliberately hurting my sister. My dad was stern, telling me he was deeply disappointed in my childishness and lack of family loyalty. This time, I didn't break. I put my phone on silent. I read their furious, manipulative words, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt a cold, clear anger. I ignored the calls. I ignored the texts. I ignored the emotional blackmail. I was done. The table was staying. Or so I thought. Which brings me back to this morning, to the man on my doorstep with his shoddy clipboard and my sister's name on his lips. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I positioned myself firmly in the doorway, a human barrier. I haven't ordered any services. You need to leave. The man exchanged a look with his partner, a much larger man, who was now ambling up the path, cracking his knuckles. Look, lady, the first guy said, his patience clearly gone. We got a work order. We're here for the table. Just step aside. He tried to push past me. I put my hand flat against his chest. You are not coming into my house, I said, my voice rising. I will call the police. That's when things escalated. The second, larger man shouldered his way forward with a grunt. Don't make this difficult, he grunted, his breath smelling of stale coffee. They forced the door open, pushing me back into my own entryway. It was a surreal, terrifying moment. Two strangers were in my home, uninvited and aggressive, here to steal my property on my sister's orders. My mind was reeling, a chaotic swirl of fear and outrage. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking as I unlocked it and hit the record button on the camera. I held it up, my hand trembling but my voice clear and loud. I am recording this, I announced. You are trespassing. Get out of my house right now or I'm calling 911. They paused, momentarily thrown by the phone. The first guy started to say something about not being on camera, but the bigger one was already at the table. He was done with talking. He grabbed it, trying to pivot it towards the door. But it was heavy, solid walnut, and the angle was awkward. Instead of lifting it, he gave it a massive, impatient shove, trying to brute force it through the doorway. The sound that followed will haunt me forever. A loud, sharp, sickening crack. It was the sound of wood splintering under immense pressure. It was the sound of my heart breaking. One of the beautiful, custom-made steel legs had buckled at the joint, where it met the wooden slab. The table now listed drunkenly to one side. A wounded animal. A deep, jagged crack ran up the leg, a bolt of lightning that had shattered my masterpiece. Seeing the phone still recording me, seeing the undeniable damage they'd done, they panicked. The first guy swore under his breath, his eyes wide, grabbed his partner's arm, and said, "Forget it. Let's go." They scrambled out of my house, leaving the door wide open and my beautiful broken table tilted in the middle of the room. They jumped in their unmarked truck and peeled away from the curb, leaving a screech of tires hanging in the quiet morning air. I stood there for a full minute, phone still in my hand, recording the empty doorway. The silence was deafening, amplifying the ringing in my ears. Then, a text message pinged, the sound unnaturally loud. It was Haley. Heard you called the cops. Are you insane? You're tearing this family apart over a stupid piece of wood. My beautiful, stupid piece of wood. My knees gave out, and I sank to the floor, tears finally streaming down my face. The invasion was over, but the war had just begun. The police were polite. 2 officers came, a man and a woman, their faces etched with a professional neutrality that bordered on boredom. They took my statement, examined the table with cursory glances, and watched the shaky, tear-filled video I'd filmed. But their tone was one of weary resignation. So the person who sent them was your sister? The male officer asked, clicking his pen. Yes, but I explicitly told her no. They forced their way in. That's breaking and entering, isn't it? He sighed, sharing a look with his partner. Ma'am, this sounds like a domestic dispute, a civil matter. You can try to sue your sister for the damages, but pressing criminal charges for trespassing is going to be difficult when she can claim it was all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? They forced their way into my home and broke my property, but I could already see the narrative Haley would spin, painting me as the hysterical, unreasonable one. Oh, it was a terrible mix-up. I thought she'd said yes. The movers I hired off an app were just a little too enthusiastic. It would be my word against hers. And in my family, my word had never been worth much. I knew I needed more. I needed something concrete, something undeniable. That's when I remembered the cameras. My condo building is managed by a notoriously strict homeowners association. They have cameras in all the common areas, including the hallway right outside my front door, positioned to get a clear view of anyone entering or leaving my unit. I drafted a careful email to the HOA board. I didn't mention my sister or the family drama. I kept it professional and alarming. I reported that 2 unauthorized, unlicensed men had gained entry to the building under false pretenses, forced their way into my unit, and caused significant property damage before fleeing. I attached the police report number for good measure, a small but crucial piece of official leverage. The initial response was a bland, form letter acknowledgement. But attaching the police report number was the magic key. It kicked the issue up a level from resident complaint to potential liability issue. 3 days later, a new email landed in my inbox. This one was from the HOA's management company, and it was CC'd to their legal department. Ms. Hazel Miller, we have reviewed the security footage from the morning of date. We take matters of resident safety and building security very seriously. We are investigating how these individuals gained access to the property. Please be assured we are treating this with the utmost urgency. The ground had shifted. This was no longer just Haley versus me. This was Haley versus the full, bureaucratic might of the HOA and its lawyers. She hadn't just sent 2 goons to my door. She had breached the security of the entire building. The stakes had just been raised considerably. But the real breakthrough, the moment that would change everything, came from a place I never expected. It came from old Arthur, the man who had built the table, in a way he could never have intended. I found a specialist in antique and fine furniture restoration online. His name was Mr. Evans, a quiet, methodical man with hands as gnarled as ancient oak and eyes that saw the history in a piece of wood. He came to my home to assess the damage. He circled the table with a reverence that made my heart ache, running his fingers gently over the splintered wood, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's a clean break," he murmured, his voice soft. "A bad one, but I can fix it. It's a shame. This is a beautiful piece, the work of a true craftsman." He spent nearly an hour examining every inch of it, making notes, taking measurements. As he was getting ready to leave, he knelt down one last time, peering at the underside of the table, where the leg had been damaged. He was silent for a long time, his head tilted. "Miss," he said finally, his voice different now, laced with curiosity. "Come here a moment, I want to show you something." I knelt beside him on the floor. He pointed to a spot on the underside of the walnut slab, tucked away in a corner, almost completely hidden from view. You would never see it unless you were on your hands and knees or had the table flipped completely upside down. There, burned delicately into the dark wood, was a small, elegant insignia, a stylized letter, A, inside a circle of oak leaves. It was Arthur's maker's mark. I smiled, a sad, wistful expression. "That's the artisan's mark," I said. "Yes," Mr. Evans agreed, "but look closer, right next to it." I squinted, leaning in until my nose was almost touching the wood. There, etched into the grain with the same fine, precise tool, was another inscription. It was a single line of tiny, perfect script. My breath caught in my throat. I read the words, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Exclusively for Hazel Miller, 2025. It was the smoking gun. It was the silver bullet. It was the undeniable, irrefutable, unspinnable proof that killed every lie Haley could ever dream of telling. You can't misunderstand a gift. You can't accidentally take something that literally has another person's name carved into it as its sole owner. This wasn't a family asset. It wasn't a misunderstanding. The inscription proved, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that this table was mine, commissioned by me and made for me. Haley's story of a mix-up had just crumbled into dust. This was now, unequivocally, a premeditated, failed attempt at theft. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. The game had changed. And I was finally holding all the cards. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I took out my phone, my hands perfectly steady this time, and I took a series of crystal-clear, high-resolution photos of the maker's mark and the inscription next to it. I zoomed in, making sure every single letter of my name was perfectly legible against the rich grain of the walnut. Then, I opened up a group text to my parents and Haley. I attached the best photo, and I wrote a single simple sentence beneath it. "Funny, I don't remember commissioning this as a gift for anyone but myself. My lawyer will be in touch regarding the repair costs and the felony theft charges." I hit send. The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I have ever heard. No immediate, angry rebuttal, no frantic, gaslighting excuses. Just pure, unadulterated, dead air. Haley, for the first time in her life, was speechless. I sent the same photo and a brief, factual explanation to the police officer who had taken my report, adding that this new evidence proved intent. I forwarded it to the HOA's legal department. The civil dispute was about to get very uncivil indeed. About an hour later, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was completely different. The righteous indignation was gone, replaced by a high-pitched, frantic panic. "Hazel? Honey, listen," she stammered, her words tumbling over each other. "I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. We need to talk about this as a family. There's no need to get lawyers involved. Your sister is very upset." The time for talking, as a family, ended when 2 strangers forced their way into my home to steal my property on your golden child's orders. I replied, my voice as cold and hard as the steel legs of my table. I hung up. My father called next, attempting his usual calm, authoritative tone, but it was thin, brittle. Hazel, you're blowing this out of proportion. It was a mistake. Haley feels terrible. Just tell us what the repairs cost and we'll handle it. Let's put this behind us for the sake of the family. You don't get it, I said flatly. This isn't just about money anymore. This is about consequences. Actions have them. It's time she learned that. I hung up on him too. I let them stew in their panic for a full day. Then, I sent a formal email, not just to them, but to my brother-in-law as well, making sure all the responsible parties were included. I laid out my terms, and I made it clear that they were not suggestions. They were conditions. There would be no negotiation. First, they would pay for the restoration. Every single cent. I told them they would collectively cover the entire cost quoted by Mr. Evans, right down to the transportation fees, to and from his workshop. Second, I demanded accountability in writing. I required a formal signed apology from Haley herself, one that didn't just say, I'm sorry, but explicitly acknowledged that she knowingly sent people to my home to take my property without my consent, and that her actions were the direct cause of the damage. And third, I was building a wall. They would all be required to sign a binding agreement, a statement that recognized my property as my own, and promised that they would never again, for the good of the family, or any other reason, attempt to move, borrow, or make decisions about my belongings. This was about drawing a line in the sand so deep, they could never cross it again. The email concluded, if these terms are not met in full within 1 week, I will be moving forward with filing a small claims court case for the damages, and I will present all evidence, including the security footage from my building and the photos of the inscription, to the district attorney's office to pursue criminal charges for attempted theft and breaking and entering. Your choice. Checkmate. The result was a swift and total capitulation. The money for the repairs was wired to my account within 2 days. The letter from Haley arrived via courier. It was a masterpiece of passive aggression, a grudging, resentful apology that dripped with self-pity. But it met the technical criteria. She admitted what she'd done. The signed agreement came a day later, scanned and emailed, the digital signatures a testament to their defeat. The HOA, having completed its own investigation, came down on Haley like a ton of bricks. They fined her thousands of dollars for the security breach and issued a final warning. Any further violation of the building's rules would result in legal action against her as well. My brother-in-law, who had apparently funded the movers, was incandescent with rage, mostly at Haley for being so sloppy and getting caught. My relationship with my parents and sister is, for all intents and purposes, shattered. They try to call, sending texts about healing and moving forward, but their words are hollow. They aren't sorry for what they did. They are sorry they got caught. The trust is gone, burned away to reveal the ugly, entitled truth of our family dynamic. I am in low to no contact with them, and a profound sense of peace has settled over my life. The constant, low-grade anxiety of waiting for the next boundary to be crossed has vanished. Mr. Evans worked his magic. The table came back to me last week, looking as perfect and beautiful as the day Arthur first delivered it. You can't even see the scar unless you know exactly where to look. It's no longer just a piece of furniture. It's a monument, a symbol of my independence. This year, Thanksgiving will be at my house. On my table, my chosen family, Sarah and a few other close friends who have been my rock through all of this, will be there. We'll eat, we'll laugh, and we'll be grateful for genuine love and real respect. Justice, just like my beautiful walnut table, has been restored.